Hey guys, welcome to Cultured. It's your homegirl, it's your host, Bromley. Our guest today is my dear friend, Sabina Andreva. We're going to talk to her about her life and her testimony and basically just get to know her a little bit because she's just absolutely incredible. I do want to let you guys know that the upcoming audio has a little bit of technical issues when it comes to echo, but we'll make sure to handle it better next time. So without further ado, let's get to it. So like I said, guys, my guest today is my dear friend, Sabina. Do you want to say hi?
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Pleasure is all mine. But I met Sabina probably I definitely met you in my first year that I was here in Bulgaria, and she's always been she's been my friend, and I would say in many ways my mentor as well in a lot of ways. Yeah, like in how she the way she carries herself is like with this level of like maturity, and she's so graceful.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you. Just like you're talking about somebody else.
Did you expect I would say all these things about you? No, but she's more than what I've described her to be. But yeah, so we're gonna talk to her about her life because she is someone who I believe has a lot of stories, and I tell her, sometimes she keeps things. She's kind of a private person, but once you get to know her, you see that she's been through a lot in life, and her story is just absolutely amazing. So yeah.
I sometimes don't even do it on purpose. It's just...
Really?
Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, are people actually interested in this? Are they interested in what I have to say in my story? I don't find it that interesting, so...
I think it's a personal thing as well. Like, even for me, I'm like, if people ask me, like, oh, what's your story? I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing... But I get that. I get why... I'm always like wanting to know somebody else's. I'm like, oh, your story is much more fascinating than mine. But yeah, I think it's like subjective. But yeah, so why don't you tell us what you do here currently?
Currently here in Sofia, Bulgaria. I'm living here.
Yes.
I'm working here.
Yes.
I'm going to church here.
Yep.
I work as a journalist and an editor right now.
Yep.
For work, I occasionally translate, I edit texts, and I write about interesting stuff happening in the world.
Wow, that's so cool. I think you're the first journalist I've met.
Oh.
I don't think I've met a journalist.
Really?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, let's get into your life. Like, how was it being raised in? So you were brought up in Sliven.
Yes.
And how was it like being brought up there?
It's a normal city. I wouldn't say it's a small city, but maybe like a medium-sized city.
Yeah.
In top 10 in Bulgaria, maybe.
Wow.
And I grew up there. I lived there up until I was 18, and then as soon as I graduated from high school, I moved to other places.
Right. Oh, how many places have you been?
I've lived in total, I think, 4 or 5 places throughout my life.
Wow. I didn't know that about you. Wow. Okay.
And now, most recent is Sofia.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been here for now maybe 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years. So, like, what's it like being brought up in Sliven? Is it a very like close downtown, or like is it very like would you say more city vibes, or what's it like?
It's a mixture of both, actually.
Okay.
Because you do know kind of everybody, and everybody knows you, but at the same time, it's also easy to get lost in the crowd, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. And
But yeah.
How would you say your childhood was? Would you say it was amazing, and did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had a happy childhood.
That's awesome.
And I had many friends when I was growing up. It was just a lot of fun. I was a free kid. I was really a free kid, and it was the same with my...
free kid?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And it was the same with my brother. My parents were very liberal. Right. We would go out and stay out until 10, 11 p.m.
Wow. Was that the norm there? Was that the normal?
That was pretty much normal.
That's
All
awesome.
the kids in the 90s in Bulgaria grew up like that.
Oh, wow. And were you raised Christian in your...
No.
Okay.
Not really, no.
And want to tell us about that?
Sure. I remember that my walk in Christianity started very early, but I didn't grow up in church.
Right.
When I was about, I don't even remember how old I was. I don't think I was even in school yet. I was like 5 or 6 when my grandma started taking us to church, to her church. And it was a Pentecostal, very traditional church.
Wow.
And we would go there for maybe a year.
Right.
Like, I don't remember a lot of it because I was very young, but I remember that, I remember the vibe of it. And I remember
Right.
how important it was for my grandma for us to be there.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then stuff happened, life happened, and she had to move to the countryside, so there was no one to take us to church anymore.
Okay, where were your parents at in this? Like, were they for it? Like, were you guys going to church? Or they were like, okay, they can do whatever they want, but like, we're not with it?
My mom was actually coming with us
Okay, yeah.
for a while. Yeah, she was
Okay.
coming with us. But my dad, he was very, very supportive of the Orthodox Church here in Bulgaria. So
Right.
he wouldn't really like to come to
Right, got it, got it.
Pentecostal
Okay.
church.
Were there a lot of Pentecostal churches at the time? Like,
No, not really. At least not in Sliven. There
Right.
was just maybe a couple
okay.
back then.
Wow. Yeah, and then, so what happened after your grandmother moved away, and what was it like for you?
And then for the next 15 years, religion in general was missing from my life.
Right.
Yeah, I went through a lot of stuff during that time, but I think that I knew of church, I knew of God, but I didn't have a relationship with God, and I didn't really go to church. I would
Wow.
occasionally go to the Orthodox churches,
Right.
for Easter or Christmas or something like that, like
Wow.
your usual Bulgarians do.
Okay. What did that look like, that life, before, like, let's say you actively started going to church? What was that life like? Was God still part of your life? Like, you said you go to church, but was he something you were seeking for yourself, or were you living life as you wanted, or what did it look like those years?
Well, since it was taken from me at a very early age, I didn't really realize that I needed that.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
As I said, it was kind of something that I knew of, but I didn't really feel the need of God.
Mm-hmm.
But there was definitely a need there for something more.
Right.
I think that's something that you find in everybody, not just
Wow.
people who have been to church or, knew of God.
Right.
And throughout, those 15 years that I was missing from the church and the church was missing from me, I knew that there was something. I knew that there was a void maybe in me. And I especially felt that around the time I turned 18 and I started looking for what I was going to do with my life.
Right.
I realized that, education, work, or whatever profession that I might choose is not going to fulfill that void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there needs to be something else there.
Right.
So then, fast forward,
Yeah.
15 years later, I had just finished my first year in university, and I was home for the summer when my mom asked myself and my brother if we wanted to go to church.
Okay.
Which was out of nowhere, absolutely out of nowhere.
Wow. Yeah.
And we both kind of looked at each other and we're like, yeah, sure.
Was this here in Sofia?
No, that was back in Sliven.
Sliven. Okay.
Yeah, we moved to Sofia 5 years after that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turned out that a coworker of my mom was going to this church, and for the period of 1 year, almost every day she's been asking her to go to church with her.
Wow.
And my mom didn't tell us anything about this.
Wow.
Just one day, out of nowhere, she was like, do you guys want to go to church together? And
Wow.
we knew what to expect. We knew what the churches here look like. So we said,
Right.
yeah, and during that time, our grandma never stopped talking about God. She never stopped.
Wow.
And she would tell us testimonies of different people. She would pray for us, like, non-stop.
Wow.
And every time we talk to her on the phone now, she's still like, hey, I pray for you every morning.
That's
So
awesome.
and now we can share this life with her, which is amazing.
I remember having conversations with you, and I remember you're really close to this grandma of yours, right?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's like I can relate. Like the grandparents in our families have like a huge part to play especially because they have these years of like living with God, and they just that's all they want to talk about, you know. So I totally get that. Like, and so like was when your mom asked you, you know, if you wanted to go to church, was that an answer to something, or was that something that you were searching for, or you were like, okay, you know, I'll just check, you know, I've been there before, I'll check it out. Was it like that?
It was an answer to a question that I hadn't asked myself, really.
Wow.
Because, you know, as I said, like I was looking for something, but I wasn't really sure what I was looking for.
Right.
And then she was like, you want to go to church? And I'm like, sure.
Wow. And how was it?
It was amazing because the first time we went to this church, there was an American pastor visiting.
Okay.
So he was preaching. And the year before that was my first year in university, and I was really confused because the specialty that I chose wasn't exactly something that my family agreed with.
Right.
And I was feeling very stuck. I was feeling very confused because I was asking myself, is this the right thing? Did I make the right decision?
Right.
Did I make a mistake? Why is everybody coming at me like that?
Yeah.
And then we went to church, and this pastor was talking about being stuck. And how it's your decision to stop being stuck and start to move on.
Yeah.
It's your decision. It really is something that you need to start moving. You know, you need to start making the right decisions for yourself and not find excuses.
Wow. Like, did you have, so when you had that, you know, you went to church at that time, was it something that just, you know, God was just reintroduced in your life in a much more magnified way, or was that, you know, like, you know, when people say I had that turning point, was that something like that, or was it like, oh yeah, God was just like much more magnified now, like, okay, you know
I
what?
think it was definitely something that spoke to me, and I wouldn't say that was my turning point, but it was definitely a big thing.
Okay.
Because I think my turning point, the point where I decided this is it, this is my life, like God is my life right now, and it's gonna be in my life until I die. And then after that.
Yeah. And when was that? When did that turning point happen?
I think that happened a few years after that.
Okay,
because from that moment that we started going to church until that point that I call my turning point, I did make some mistakes. And I did stumble, you know, along the way.
Yeah.
But then it came a day when I decided, you know, this is it. I'm done.
Right.
I have to actually do things the right way.
Right.
And I think turning myself to God and actually opening my life to God is the way to do it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think that journey that we have, like, you know, people sometimes think, you know, we have this experience with God, and then we're like, oh, everything's sorted. But it's so crazy how different people's story, like how we go from, you know, finding God or having that moment with God, and then we're still figuring it out.
Oh yeah,
know?
definitely.
And we see God's hand in our life, and then it just slowly you see our lives conforming to the path that God's called us to be in, you know. So the turning point that you said was it still in Slovenia, or where were you at that time?
It was kind of along the way, really, because I was moving from a place to place.
Right.
I was trying to find out where I'm supposed to live. And then some relationships with people happened and mishaps in those relationships. And I realized that I'm making mistakes that I should no longer make, and I'm hurting people. As much as I don't want to admit that, I am hurting people. And I need to start learning how to build relationships in a healthy way and how to approach my life in a healthy way.
Wow. How did that, like having a relationship with God, how did that help you with mending your relationships around you? Like, how did that?
When I started building my relationship with God, and when I started reading His Word and praying, I started connecting to myself more.
Right. Okay.
Which is how I started connecting to other people more.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Because even when I'm private, I don't realize that I'm private.
Yeah.
But then when I started opening myself to God, I realized that I can do this with other people.
Oh wow, that's so good.
And I should be doing this with other people.
Oh, that is.
And
so
I
good.
shouldn't close myself.
Oh wow, wow. So yeah, so this was so in this at this point where were we at? That was like 4 or 5 years ago. How many years ago?
That was yeah, maybe before I moved to Sofia. Maybe right before I moved to Sofia.
Wow. And would you
Yeah.
say that your life? I mean, what was the reason that you guys moved to Sofia? Was it that you wanted to leave that life there, or were there because of a job here? What was the reason that you moved?
I was sure at that point that I didn't want to live in Sliven anymore. I mean,
Okay.
I always knew it, to
Why-
be honest.
Why was that?
Because I knew that it wasn't my place.
Right. Okay.
I just knew. I mean, I don't have anything against the city or anything, but I just knew that this isn't where I'm supposed to build my life.
Okay.
And then I graduated from university, and my brother graduated from high school at the same time. So
Okay.
we were trying to figure out what are we gonna do, and we realized, okay, why don't we move to Sofia and see what's going on there? Because he's gonna study here anyway.
Right.
So why don't I move with him and see what's gonna happen? And we're still here.
Wow. Wow. How 5
yeah.
years later? Wow.
It wasn't something, crazy, supernatural or anything like that. It was just a very
Normal. But you said you moved 5 times. So where were the other places that you guys moved to?
After Stephen, I went to Veliko Trnovo, which is
Okay.
where I studied.
Yeah.
And then during the summers, I would live by the seaside.
Wow.
And then for a portion of my last year in university, I moved to the Czech Republic. I lived in Prague for a while there.
Oh wow! See, like you've. I was thinking, okay, so the 2 parts that you talked about was in Sliven, but in between all these things
Yeah, I
happened.
was here and there and everywhere.
Well, are you someone who's okay with moving around a lot, or do you prefer to be just like in one city or and just settle there?
Back then, I was okay with it, and I thought of it as an adventure. I really wanted to explore different options, different cities, different places around the world.
Right.
But now I think that I like that I'm settled.
Right. Wow. I know. I think that comes with time. When you're younger in college years, you're like, I want to travel and do this and that. But
Maybe it's that.
yeah. But yeah. So
I don't mind moving now, but
now?
I'm not planning it. I'm just thinking
Okay.
about it. I'm like, oh, why don't I move?
oh wow, I know. I mean, it's about. I always thought somebody. I mean, the other day we were having a conversation. We're talking about like, oh, where would you like to move? But like, once you have a community and stuff,
Oh,
there's no
yeah.
place like where you'd not want. If you have like a good community, good group of people, you're like, oh yeah, I'll stay there.
Absolutely,
That's.
yeah.
I think that's one of the big things about like when you go to a new place. But yeah, did you feel like you had a community everywhere you went, or was it like, oh, I can't wait to get out of this place or wherever it is that you lived?
That's a good question.
Really?
It is good because I haven't really thought about it, but I did have people that I was surrounded with every time I moved. But I knew in the back of my mind always that these people are in my life for a season.
Right. Yeah.
So I also didn't really try to build meaningful relationships with them.
Right.
I was like, okay, we're friends for like a few months, but then I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pack up and go. Yeah. That's a harsh reality.
It is.
Anyway, but so then you and then right after that you moved to Sofia, right? After the that time. And what did it look like, your life here in Sofia?
It looked really weird.
Really? Oh,
It looked
wow.
really unknown.
Okay.
More than anything, because I had absolutely no idea what I was gonna work. I had no job. We just found a place for like 2 days.
Okay, wow.
And we stayed in that place for actually a few months, and it was horrible.
Oh.
But yeah, it was definitely weird. It was definitely something that we didn't really plan for.
Right.
But we knew that we're moving, this is it, and maybe along the way things will
Wow.
we'll start arranging somehow.
Wow. And how did you how did you continue your church life, and like did you start going to church as soon, or was it like something that kind of like was reintroduced into your life again?
Actually, we started going to church as soon as we moved because back in our church in Sliven, they recommended us the church that we're still going to.
Oh wow!
And the first Sunday that we moved, we came to church and it was amazing. It
Wow.
was just mind-blowing, and we didn't even want to search for another church. We
Right.
loved it and we stayed.
Oh, was it a Pentecostal church as well?
No.
Okay, it was something from your hometown. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and how did you end up coming to Zoe? Like, you know, where we are now.
Our pastor
Yeah.
back in Sliven is a very good friend with our pastor here in Zoe.
Oh wow.
So he told us about Zoe, and we loved it.
Wow.
We really did. He was like, you have to go there. It's amazing. There's a lot of young people. They gather at a club.
Oh yeah, true story.
The atmosphere is amazing. So,
Yes.
And yeah, he didn't lie.
I love it. You know, when people come to Zoe, people ask like, "You guys have church at a club? What?"
Yeah.
But it's so crazy, like how even I remember when I first walked into Zoe, and I was thinking like I didn't think much of the club part of it. When other people started raising it with me is when I was like, oh yeah, it is in a club.
I thought the same thing.
But when I walked in, it was just like, I was looking at the warmth of everyone. They were like, oh yeah, let me find you a seat. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's awesome. You know, because so welcoming. I didn't even have to spend more than like 10-15 minutes there for me to know. I had decided that day, I was like, this is church I'm going to.
Totally.
I mean, I've been to other churches and I love the other church that I went to, but Zoe was just like, it clicked, you know? It was just absolutely incredible. But yeah, tell me about your life in Zoe, like, you know, and, you know, your journey with God throughout these years. Like, how was it for you?
For me, it was very productive and it was so fruitful to be here.
Yeah.
And I feel like for the past 5-ish years, I've grown so much spiritually.
Right.
I don't think I've grown the same way, at the same speed, maybe, anywhere else or at any other time of my life as I did here and now.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because I can see that things are done in a way that really encourage people. Encourage people to be true, to be authentic.
Right.
To find their own relationship with God and to do it in a way that is not too pushy, you know, that is not too orchestrated.
Right.
It's very genuine.
Yes. It's like it just flows, right?
It does, yeah. Totally.
Wow. It's same. I can completely relate. Like before, it was like I was serving my parents as God, but like now I'm like, oh, I found God for myself. Oh, totally, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, some things about Sabina, guys, like she, you know, when I met her, she was like, I met her at like, we went to a karaoke bar, was it?
Oh yeah.
We did karaoke together. I mean, I'd seen her before that, but I met her because we did like a Justin Bieber song together.
We bonded over Justin Bieber.
What was it? I think Love Yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Love Yourself. Yeah, so we did that song together, and then I think we walked back together, and I met her brother and her, and I was like, oh, these guys are so cool. And then before you know it, like she's like, so we have this thing called greetings team in Zoe, and it's like where people stand outside and greet everyone that's coming, and she was the leader for the greetings team for a little bit, and then she's always been translating on stage. Like we have English translation on stage, and she's been part of that. So a lot of things that God has, you know, you see, I could see for myself like how God's like moving you and growing you in different areas of your life, and you said that there was a time when someone told you that you were meant to be on the stage, and that's something. How was that like?
That was something that I never expected that I would hear about myself because you know the ways that I served in church for the past years, I did not even think that I would serve in those ways.
Yeah.
I did not even think that I would do those things throughout my life at all.
Wow.
In church or not.
Wow.
So
what did that look like? You know, going from some like I remember you saying that to me, you're like, I'm meant to be on stage. By the time you had already been on stage, I think, when you told me that, if I'm
That's because other people have told it to me. Like,
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
really figure it out on my own.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't ever think that I would have a spotlight on me.
Yeah.
In any way. I thought I'm someone who is supposed to be in the backstage, someone who is preparing things, organizing things for other people, but not like out there speaking, communicating, or doing anything in front of people.
Like when you did when you did get on stage for the first time, was it something like, did it feel weird, or was it like, oh man, like,
Oh, it felt so unreal.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah. Tell me about that.
It felt like it wasn't me. It felt like it was somebody else.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't believe what I was doing. I couldn't believe it was me. But it's all God. It's all been God.
Oh, man.
Again, I wouldn't do it on my own.
That's it,
keep doing it on my own.
I remember maybe for you, like when you got on stage, you probably would have been like, oh man, this is something I've never. But like when I saw you, like I remember the times when you got on stage around the first times, I was like, this girl's she's a natural. Like it didn't seem like you were nervous, and like your focus was like, I always appreciate translation because, I always tell like everybody who translates in our church, I always tell them, you're hearing at the same time and you're translating and then you're hearing at the same time. So it's a whole other level of focus. And I always sometimes I try to like, because I want to increase my focus, but it's, I fail miserably, but like this, with the way you guys do it, it's amazing. So to be on stage to translate and to like, at the same time be there for the first time, you're translating, you're focusing, you did incredibly. And
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and it goes back to what you said, like, that's why when God puts us up on, platforms or areas that, he's like, oh yeah, our strength is in him, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm the one who's doing it,
Totally, absolutely.
But I absolutely, like, I was like, man, this, even because prior to that I hadn't seen you on stage before, but then when you got into it, I'm like, man, this girl's always meant to be there. Like, it's
I don't even remember when that was.
Wow. But yeah, so you went through like a season of like going through leadership and things like that, and like now, where do you see yourself now, where you're at? Like,
well, first of all, that season of leadership didn't happen right away. There was a time when I was I'm still under leadership.
Yeah, of course.
But there was a time when I was starting out, and I, even when I started greeting people, just welcoming them in church as a part of the greeting team, I was so grateful.
Right.
And so happy to be doing that.
Yeah.
Because I was just there, I was just serving and doing something, even, saying hi to people.
Yeah.
And showing them that this is home.
Wow, yeah.
That to me was even mind-blowing. And now, to be honest, I'm just still waiting for God to do something, because the way He's shown Himself in my life so far has been a surprise after a surprise. And I am in the wait for another surprise.
Wow.
And I'm sure this is going to be surprising, the next thing that I'm doing.
Like, do you feel like during quarantine and all that kind of time that it's been a building up period, or what did it look like for you?
Oh, definitely. Definitely is a time, and it's a time when you realize that there are things inside of you that you never really had time to focus on.
Yeah.
Because, people, busyness, whatever.
Yeah.
But during quarantine, you had this time to be quiet with yourself, to be quiet with God, and to see, things that you've been putting aside, you've been ignoring.
Yeah.
But it's time to stop ignoring those things, and it's time to start focusing on them and start working on them.
Yeah.
Which, when we ignore things, it's usually because we don't want to face them, because they're either ugly or hard or painful or whatever. But the only way to move past those things and the only way to grow is to face them.
Yeah, come on.
And I'm so thankful that I have God in my life to go through these things with.
Oh, it's real.
Because I wouldn't want to face things inside myself by myself.
Oh, wow.
And I'm waiting. I have faith, and I'm waiting.
Yeah.
To still work on those things and to see the finished work.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's awesome. You know, I wanted to ask you, you know, looking back at your whole life, like, what do you think is like what is the biggest lesson you've learned? Like, all these years of everything that you've gone through and like you've lived, like, what would you say is?
Oh, there's so many big lessons. How do I pick just one?
Yeah, like, you know, well, yeah, one of, you could say a couple of them, you know?
Okay, I
Yeah,
can,
go
yeah.
for
Well, first of all, don't limit God.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you let him do what he's supposed to do and he wants to with your life, he's gonna surpass every dream that you have, every expectation,
That's so good.
and he's gonna do things with you that you never imagined he would do.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I think this is one of the biggest things.
Wow.
Yeah, take the limits off, and you will see a life of abundance.
Oh, wow.
Exactly that life of abundance that the Bible talks about.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that's, what else? What else?
Something else. Be open.
Wow.
It's hard. It's painful. And well, you open yourself to being hurt, but you also open yourself to experience amazing things. So be open for other people and for opportunities and for very unexpected things to happen.
Oh man, yeah, totally.
Yeah, because you never know.
Yeah, I love what you said before. Like, you know, when you started getting close to God, you started getting real with yourself, and that's when you said like, oh, you know, it's, you know, if I can be real with God, you know, I can do this with other people. That really spoke to me. You know,
Oh.
That's just amazing. I've never. Like, I personally, if I look at my life, like, I always consider myself to be open-ish, you know, but what you just said is like, you know, there's always, like, I can always be more open and more, you know, there's always that area where I can grow, you know, and I just realized like, oh, that's so good. Like, when I draw closer to God and I become more real with God, you know, when I'm real with God, then then it's easier to be real with people. Like, only when you said that I thought about it. I was like, man, that's.
And other people are not gonna receive you the way God will, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, He is the best person that you could be open to.
Absolutely, it's not like, oh
yeah.
Of course, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be open to every single person. I mean, of course, you know, it's like when we have to be, you know, when we see that there's someone who, you know, that requires us to be open, and you know, there was so many times in my life where, you know, there has been time where God's like, okay, you can, you know, tell that part of yourself, or you can, you know, things that are buried down, deep down, you know, where no one knows. Like, there are moments when God's like, okay, you can speak about it or talk about it now, you know?
Because He knows.
Yeah, absolutely.
And He accepts you. And
absolutely. Oh,
that's all the acceptance that you need. I mean, anything else that you search for, that's you, and that's okay. That's normal.
Yeah.
That's human.
Wow.
But essentially, you need His acceptance, and you already have it, so.
Wow. And like, so in the upcoming season, like, where do you see yourself? Like, you know, what do you see yourself for the future? Like, in, you know, people ask, you know, where do you see yourself in 4 years? Not like, oh, this is what I want to be, but like, where do you see yourself with regards to like anything, with regards to your relationship with God or whatever? Well,
I definitely want to see myself grow.
Yeah.
Because, well, no one wants to stay in the same place forever, obviously, but I definitely want to grow in my spirituality.
Right.
And one thing that I want to grow in particularly is my faith and my trust in God.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing that, especially right now during this season and during quarantine and everything that's been going on with the world, I can see myself that I'm lacking in a way.
Yeah.
In this area, so I definitely want to see myself trusting God even more in much wilder ways, because I know there are other wilder ways.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes, I definitely want to see that.
Wow.
And I want to explore the part of myself that I have just started exploring, you know, the serving on stage and serving with the word and communicating the word to people.
Yeah.
And I don't mean particularly, you know, being on stage, being with the spotlight on, whatever.
Just like serving, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Oh man, like, it's funny like how when we sit and talk about, you know, you sit with, I love doing this because I get to like see like, oh, it's just everybody's story is so different, and it's so beautiful how, you know, God is taking each person through their, you know, through their life and what they're on their journey, and how the things that different people struggle with different things. And you know, I love hearing, like, whenever I go on YouTube, I love hearing testimonies. I love hearing people's, like, people who have struggled, like, you know, been abused, and like the things that they've lived, and then you have much more, you know, testimonies where they had an amazing life and they encountered God, and like you see different people's lives being represented, and how God just aligns everybody's life.
Absolutely,
you know, and then after we get on that life, we just don't know anything different. We're like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine a life without Him.
Yeah, this is the best way my life could have turned out.
Yeah, it's so great. Like, I love your story because it's like it has got its simplicity, but at the same time the beauty of God in it. Like how you're like, oh, God just like led me every path of the way and showed me like, okay, this is a season for this, and this is a season where and I love how real you are. That's one thing that I've noticed whenever I've spoken to you, you don't tend to sugarcoat anything. You're very real with whoever, be it boy or girl. You're very real in your conversations, and you know, like very easygoing, and it's like it just, that kind of shows. You might think, oh yeah, that's how she's with other people, but it also reflects your relationship with God as well. Like how you would be willing to willing to listen to what God has to say. You know, how you would align your life to what. Because it's you might think, like, because probably you're used to doing that, you might think, oh, that's how everyone does it. But you inspire me in that way, like how I love the fact that, like, I love how you know your beliefs on God, like you're like so stern in it. Like I love it. I've noticed that from the time I met you.
I'm very stubborn, that's why.
I love it. Like it's a good, because my dad is a person who's very stubborn, like in his beliefs.
Yeah, you told me.
Yeah, when he was not stubborn for the Lord, like he was like, you know, someone who was in the way of the world. But when God called him, and you know, God came into his life, he was now stubborn for God, which is amazing. Yeah, and that's one of the best. You know, I think I kind of tend to think of the character Paul in the Bible, because he became stubborn for the Lord, you know, which is, and I believe that, I don't know, I've always been drawn to people who are like that. Like I love when you're just like, you know, you're well spoken, and you're like, oh yeah, that's how God would do it, and you have that confidence, you know,
because that's as real as life can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, you can be open, you can absolutely be open, and you should be open.
Yeah.
And you should, when you go to God, you should be like, listen, I've had some stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you know about them, so please help me out.
Yeah, so good, Sabina. But yeah, that's I wanted to know, like, I wanted people to know, like, what your life was like how, you know, how you transitioned from like being like in a town, and now you're like serving at this awesome church. And, you know, it's so great. Like this is as pure as it can get, you know. It's so good.
And yeah, I don't see it, as I said, as so interesting, but looking back, I've had some things happen that I didn't expect that would happen. I didn't see my life in that way, but I've seen that the way God put it, you know, to happen, the way He arranged things and the plan that He has for my life, it's perfect. It's not great, it's not always pleasant, but it's perfect, and there's a reason why it should turn out the way it turns out.
Man, praise God. Praise God for you.
And when bad things happen, there's comfort.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, He's gonna leave you lonely, you know.
Never.
And I know you've been through quite a bit of stuff over the years, and like, you know, when trust me, guys, when Sabina says that, you know, like, you know, it's not been perfect, but God's always been there. It's like, trust her words that she means it when she says that.
It's a part of a perfect plan. Let's put it that way. It's a part of a perfect plan, and it makes sense.
Absolutely. Sorry. No, go for it.
It's not gonna make sense in the moment that it's happening, but you know, as time goes on and years go by, and you look back, you're gonna think, oh, that's why I should have gone through this. That's why this should have happened, so I could build this in myself.
That's amazing.
And that's why I've learned to appreciate every moment and every everything that happens in my life, because it brings something else.
That's awesome.
It's not just a bad memory or an unpleasant experience. There's
Right.
always a lesson.
There's always a lesson.
Yeah.
That's so good.
It's a very philosophical way to look at life, but
What is the lesson? No, absolutely. Like, if you live your life with that kind of attitude, like, you know, you always try to find God in every situation, you know?
oh yeah.
And that's the best. That's the best, you know? It will be difficult, but, you know, I mean, I wouldn't say that I've faced a lot of, like, you know, like crazy things in my life, but I'm training myself, like, oh, you know what, like, I want to find God in everything, you know, that God is with me.
Yeah.
So he's got with me always, so I want to find him always, you know, like.
Amazing. And that's a great exercise for your faith.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
trying to find God in everything that's happening.
Absolutely,
Good
absolutely.
or bad. He's
Yeah.
there.
Oh, so good, Sabina. And I just want to, like, you have no idea, like, how sometimes there are moments, I'm not even making this up, like, when there are moments when I've had, like, things that I wanted to do regarding a group that I'm, you know, leading, or things that I'm like, okay, you know what, Sabina does it this way, you know, so I'm going to do it this way. You know, that you have that sense of responsibility, you know. It's not like, oh, yeah, they pick anyone to be a leader, you know. You have that you know the seriousness with which you do the things that you're assigned to do. You know, and I feel like that's something that I'm learning, and that's something that I've learned from your life, like how you're very responsible, you know, like, okay, this needs to be done, and what are the things we're doing for these people, you know. So I love that this season that God's taking you on, and I love that people get to hear your story.
Oh.
And I can't wait to see what God's gonna do in your life, and
Yeah,
I
me too.
believe in greatness. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and like,
It's been great.
yeah, you'll be
Yeah.
back, trust me.
You're not gonna get rid of me that easily.
I know, I've been trying for like
Seriously.
I'm
It's been how many years?
5. But I'm so grateful. But I just want to thank you again for joining us, and also you guys for listening in. I pray that, you know, whatever we talk on this podcast, that it inspires you in some way or the other, like on your journey with God, and if there's things that you're struggling with, I pray that, you know, God helps you through it.
Yep.
But yeah, until next time, guys. You want to say bye, Sabina?
Of course, I want to say bye.
So yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, you guys.
Bye.